Lawrence. I'm changing bar 19 to a 3/4 bar, and bar 24 is changed to 7/8. Dum, bum, 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 bum. Ralph, play that all legato. Once more.
The River Wild, Part 1, take 78.
I think upon sitting down the first day of a new score, it's quite intimidating. What am I going to do? What am I going to do that's different? And what am I going to do that I haven't done before? And how am I going to get inside these characters? It's awesome. I think the basic process of creativity is always the same. You sit down with the blank page and you put things down till you get the right thing. I think that the great part of creativity is overcoming fear. Fear is a given. When you sit down and you have to begin something, don't be afraid to be filled with fear, because it goes with the turf. I mean, the idea of coming away empty-handed is sometimes paralyzing. But you got to move on in spite of that, because you know that you can get over that. And it's not easy. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it ain't so easy.
First Star Trek motion picture was very difficult for me. We had just gone through the Star Wars thing, and to come up with a different approach to it, and yet the same approach is what the studio wanted. Big and heroic, and yet different. I think that when someone gives you this kind of direction, for me it's sort of difficult, because then I'm not free to let my own instincts come through. And the Star Trek was very difficult. I really sweated that one out for 10 days, just getting the basic theme. Once the idea of a score is there, then the rest of it is very easy.
For me, I have to see a picture completed, because I like to react to a film like an audience. I mean, I'd like to be one of the people who pays $7 or whatever it is, goes sees a movie and sits back and have a good time. And so if I can see a film that way, then I react like an audience does, and that's where I get my feelings from. A script doesn't tell me that much, because the director hasn't put his imprint on the film yet. I have to have that emotional connection with the visual image and the performance of the actors.
Yeah! Oh!
I have no formula. I mean, I can't even write a theme based on a script.
Watch this!
I know that I look at a film and the first thing I want to try and do is that I want one theme that will more or less sum up the entire, I don't want to say philosophical, but the whole spiritual, perhaps, dramatic message of the picture. I need the main theme, then I need some motif. Not a theme, but a motif. Something secondary. I mean, I always need that in a film. You know, that was the basic motif. Something that I can develop into a zillion different ways, and it may sound sort of simple and naive at the beginning, but who knows where it'll go. With me, I don't really know what the hell's going to happen until I've done it. Once the intellectual process and the discussion is over with, I forget about all that and clear my mind and really react emotionally. Twice in my life, I've gone out on the limb from being very bravura with the producer, the director. Once was in The Omen. I was driving out to the studio not to see it. They hadn't started shooting yet, but he wanted me to meet the director and watch them training the Rottweilers. And so he says, "What do you hear in the music?" And, you know, big me, I said, "Voices." I said, "Great idea." And 6 months later, when I came back to do the film, he said, "Love that idea, the voices, I can still hear them." I said, "Oh my God, what did I get myself into?"
We do stop, start, and spotting, stopping the film and talking about it. We insist we run it all the way through. And then forget it. Go out and have dinner, drinks, or whatever we're going to do, and start to talk about the picture. What was the intent? What does it feel like? What's going to happen? What's What am I trying to convey in the picture? What are the emotions of the picture? What's the illusion you're trying to create? Whether it's happiness, it's love, it's fright, it's fear, it's anxiety, it's tension. We talk through each and every scene, what it means to me, what I think is happening within that piece. What do they think is happening in that piece?
Tom? Is that you?
The nominees for original score are Bernard Herrmann for Obsession, Jerry Goldsmith for The Omen, Jerry Fielding for The Outlaw Josie Wales, Bernard Herrmann for Taxi Driver, Lalo Schifrin for Voyage of the Damned, and the winner is Jerry Goldsmith for The Omen.
When he won that award, it was, for us, like the shot heard around the world. We heard from friends, acquaintances, admirers. People sent out such accolades and love, and were genuinely thrilled around the world from all corners, and it didn't stop. I remember for 2 weeks straight.
I don't really know what to say. I must thank Richard Donner and Harvey Bernhard for making the film in the first place. Lionel Newman for conducting it so beautifully, Arthur Morton for beautiful orchestration. And the Piper's dream did come true, dear Carol. Thank you.
I remember when I was around 14 or 15, I'd gone to the movies and I saw Spellbound. I came out of the theater in love with Ingrid Bergman and in love with the score that Nicholas Roche had written. And I had, at that point, made up my mind to do two things. I was going to marry Ingrid Bergman and I was going to write music for motion pictures.
Jerry Goldsmith was in my class at USC, so I was teaching 20 years there. And he was one of the first in the class. And I remember him as a young boy, very talented. He developed really tremendously.
Working with Spielberg is a treat because he loves music so much and values it so much, and it's a very close collaboration with him. He's involved practically with every note you write. Everyone considered it to be a scary picture. I never thought of that. We both looked at it as a love story, love between the family and the child, and that's what held them together to overcome the spirits and all that.
Working with a composer, especially a really good composer, is a lot like working with a good actor, where you sit down, you try to communicate in terms of what you hope the movie's all about, on every level, and then you break it down on a scene-by-scene basis and go through and talk about what you think the music can do, can't do. You give him your hopes and expectations, and he gives you his reactions.
So if there's anything that can be done to make that sharper so that we don't have to get the effect by having it hugely loud, because it's meant to be startling.
Then he can go to the keyboard or whatever, however each composer is different, how they write, and come up with sketches and so forth. At a certain point, you send them off and you cross your fingers as they go do their thing. And when they do it and it works, it's magic. I mean, there's nothing like when the music comes to the movie, because it's the last thing, the last major element, and it truly is the icing on the cake. And it can make a good scene great. It can take a scene that's weak and make it acceptable.
It was pure suspense, and what they wanted was action, tension.
I've seen times where the director will say, and somebody he'll really respect, this isn't really working for me. Here's something, I think we missed that. And instead of going, oh no, it's right, you know, you don't know what you're talking about, and he'll go, you know, you may be right, I think I may have possibly missed it. Let's look at that again. You're right, and he'll go out there and dictate it to the orchestra. And he's built this relationship with various directors that transcends the normal working atmosphere, because there's a measure of trust and respect because of that. And he's brought people along that aren't terrifically musical, but have an understanding emotionally what they're trying to get out of the film. And he's been able to help them along, to get a better understanding how to use music in the movie. And it's a very rare thing, and you don't see very many composers able to do that.
There are special circumstances in life where you stumble upon a collaborator and discover communication. And that's why all of us, I guess, in this business tend to, once we have found that person with whom we can communicate so perfectly, and usually in short strokes, that you tend, therefore, to use those people again and again. I have this relationship with Jerry. He has it with me. This wonder of being able to communicate. In terms of Patton, I don't think that we went to great lengths, numerous hours, discussing what was going to take place where and how it would be. But I think we must have discussed the character for about an hour, and that he is these things, and that he is these contradictions, and that these are some of his positive elements, and these are his negative elements. And it's up to you to score that in the music. And so he did.
I felt that the music must constantly remind the audience that this was a multifaceted, multi-layered personality. So the music had 3 layers to it. It had the military aspect, it had the religious aspect, and it had the archaic aspect.
I've worked with Jerry for a long, long time. We worked together in television before either of us went into film.
I started as a clerk, typist at CBS in Hollywood. My 6 months of typing in junior high school paid off because I was able to type scripts. So actually, with a lot of persistence and nagging on my part, I was engaged in the music department of CBS within a year.
1955, I was put under contract and started doing live dramatic television. And that's when my education really began. We were doing a live hour drama every week. There wasn't a lot of experience on the West Coast. They'd been doing that in the East. Climax was the show that I did. It was the first show to emanate from the West Coast. And nobody really had any experience doing that, let alone experience doing music to these things. I remember sitting in the director's office who had just come up from New York and going to do the first show. And he looked at me and said, well, what do I do? I said, you're asking me? I have no idea. And I had an orchestra of 3 musicians and myself playing the piano and the Nova chord and the organ. And we would be in another studio, and I'd have a headset and a monitor and pray that the actors would say the same lines at the same tempo through the 3 dress rehearsals and on the air, and that they would move the same speed. Of course, they never did. And doing that week in and week out, you really learned a lot. And I really did that for about 3 years, not just on Climax. I eventually graduated to Playhouse 90 and other live shows. I was just doing everything that they had. I was sort of the house man, which was, you know, in your early 20s and starting out, it's just wonderful. And, you know, it's a great education, an applied education that it's impossible to get today, I think. The dramatic situations of the programs changed each week. You were in a new situation, very little time. Finances were very tight. I mean, you had to ad-lib and use your imagination all the time and figure out shortcuts. And it was a real baptism under fire. The only fortunate thing is that everybody who was directing and writing and acting didn't know much more about it than I did. We were all in our infancy and we were all learning and getting paid to learn. Not much, but we were learning. And so for me, it was a very exciting time. I did Gunsmoke, Perry Mason, Have Gun Will Travel, Twilight Zone.
The climax of the job was when he would go and record it. So I would always, anytime I could, I would go to the sessions. And Planet of the Apes was one that I went to and was just blown away by it. Even at 9 or 10 years old, I was just astounded. It was so rhythmically oriented, and I wanted to be a percussionist and a drummer, and the grooves that he used were phenomenal.
Schaffner. I did 7 films with him, and he was wonderful. He somehow, in very few words, can convey what he was feeling and what he hoped that I would feel.
We'll keep doing it to get tears.
Out of 6 or 7 pictures to make a choice, I would say that his most eloquent scores are from Planet of the Apes and Patton and Islands in the Stream.
I think that any man that has children always has guilt about have they raised their children right or not, and the mistakes they've made with their children. And that picture was so special. It went so deeply in the relationship with the father and the boys. And to me, it's always been one of Schaffner's best films, and I think it's one of my best scores. And it was such a touching story. I think Scott was tremendous in it, and there wasn't really very much to think about in that picture, except the emotions. And here, rather, you know, I propped my head on that was to try to find some theme that was masculine and also very touching and sensitive. And I think it worked very well.
Hey, you might as well come in. Get out of the rain.
Damn it. Papa! Papa!
Come on in. Hello, Davy.
I've always felt that every picture I did with him was a major growth period for me musically. Okay, we can use a little more chimes there. Chimes and timpani and vibraphone.
You got bass drum in there too.
Thank you. Let's get these synthesizers in, Frank. We'll try to get the dial.
I think you need to push your percussion just a little bit more at the beginning.
Okay.
How's that? Perfection. It's a dream. Did you make it? Good.
No, you didn't record it yet, did you? It's on the computer. People wondered, why am I still doing it after almost 40 years? Because I love doing it. I mean, I'm one of the few people in the world who's doing what he wanted to do since he was a kid.
I always remember him playing the piano. Always. There was always a piano in that house. His mother was a pianist. His father played the violin. Maury was very instrumental in supporting Jerry in his music. He and Tessie were dedicated to Jerry's getting the best teachers, and over the years that proved to be true.
But I never did anything musically except enjoying good music. And of course, Gerald was exposed to it when he was quite young.
He started when he was 6. He may have been tempted to go outside and play with kids, but the music came first.
We didn't have any idea just what the ultimate outcome would be as far as we were concerned. He was studying music and he liked it, and we went along with him. But as time went on, he did become quite serious, and he's about 9 years old. We took him to a more advanced teacher, and he did study quite seriously. As a matter of fact, he did practice 4 or 5 hours a day.
There were times when Maury and Jerry and myself would play together. Maury played violin, I played flute, and Jerry played piano.
We saw that he was interested seriously in music, and we attempted to get a more professional instructor, and we did.
The way Jacob Gimple taught was challenging.
He was a taskmaster. He was tough. We were at the bowl one evening, and Gimple performed. And after hearing him, he said, I want to study with Jacob Gimple.
When it happened, it changed his life dramatically.
I think Gimple did wonderful things for Jerry. I think he gave him a broad vision of music, and not just of a piano, you know. He escorted him into the better parts of music.
And also, he started studying with Tedesco in composition. And he studied with him quite a long while. And as time went on, we got other instructors in theory, composition, and so forth. High school seemed to take too much time away from his time to study, so we got special dispensation from some of the instructors to allow him to relieve him from some of the classwork and put more time in music.
I try and average 2 minutes of music a day. It seems like that isn't very much, but you'd be surprised how many pages 2 minutes can take in a fight or a chase. By the time I've finished the film, it's become a part of me. It's almost like being a method actor. Maybe they can call myself a method composer. I find as the weeks go by and I get more and more immersed in the film, I almost find myself taking on some of the film's personality. If it's an unpleasant film, I suppose it makes it tough on my family.
Now I always see him sitting down writing up there in the studio alone with a pencil. I told my wife the other day that it reminds me of myself. I'm a structural engineer, and of course we sit there with a pencil doing computations. It reminds me of the work I do, except he gets paid more for it than I do.
You know, I work with maybe 4 or 5 different directors a year, and they all are different, and I really depend on the director, the input from the director, and the more we go back and forth, the better it is for me. And if a director isn't happy with something I've done, that's okay, as long as they can tell me what it is that they would like that I didn't do. Or if I make a suggestion, they'll accept that. So it's a give and take.
Jerry's amazing in that he really wants approval. He does not think, I know it all. And if he's respected by the director he's working for, and if he has respect for the director he's working for, which the ultimate version of that is sort of Verhoeven, then Jerry feels safe to create.
I think Paul Verhoeven was a perfect collaborator. I learned a great deal from Paul. You think you know it all after doing it for so many years. I mean, there are times when you want to change the mood musically, and sometimes I didn't do it as gracefully as I should. And he'd catch it. I said, but that doesn't sound musical to me. I said, you're right.
The problem with film music today is if they don't like a cue, you're out of there. There's no safety zone anymore. And Paul creates a safety zone. He'll say, it doesn't work. But Jerry doesn't think he'll be seeing his final paycheck the next day. It's like, so we'll come back and work on it tomorrow.
So that's a real collaboration. And, you know, Paul said, anytime, night or day, you just call me and I'll be here.
I believe Jerry's theme to Basic Instinct came about from, that was a minor theme he had written for another scene that he used once in the picture, and Jerry was struggling to find the perfect theme for the movie. And Paul's the one who said, that's it. In this scene, that's what Basic Instinct is.
I talk about the film a lot because it was probably a textbook case of relationship between composer and director, where the director had a vision, a complete vision of what he knew these characters were, what the music should do. He didn't want to illustrate what was on the screen, and that's what music shouldn't do. He wanted to get inside these people.
Nick, which is Michael Douglas' character, he's a cop who has gone through some bad times and has done some things that you might consider wrong, and is now at the point that he wants to do okay with his life and tries to get better, and unfortunately meets this extremely dangerous woman that brings him again to the more shadowy sides of his life.
Whenever I'd finish a sequence, Paul would be here. And I remember I finished the one sort of steamy sequence that I'd slaved 5 days on. And I finally finished it, and I knew it was good. And I remember I called him, it was 12 o'clock at night. It was a rainy night, and I said, Paul, can you come over? He said, I'll be there. And he was here about 12:30, he came up, and I had it locked up, the picture, and I played it, and he sat there and says, I wouldn't change the thing. And I was like, because this was really the toughest scene in the picture. And then he's cute, he'll sit here and he played again, play it again, play it again. Let me just hear the music.
Why Basic Instinct is such a great score is thrillers tend to have the worst scores because there are basically two choices in the 90s of how to score a thriller. One is rip off Bernard Herrmann, and specifically rip off 2 or 3 of his scores. It's not even that broad of a gesture. And the second thing is do a synth pad, wow, score. So thrillers have become the junk genre for film composers. And Jerry came up with a fresh voice. And it's so simplistic. It's not gimmicky. It's just he managed to get to the underlying sexuality of the thriller. And there's no mistaking that everything is dangerous at all times, but it's completely seductive danger. And it's not music about who's going to pop out of the shadows next. You have to understand why Michael Douglas is getting drawn deeper and deeper into this world, and it's because Jerry's making him go there.
I know that there are times when the theme hasn't gelled yet, and he is searching for the love theme, the fear theme, and he has a notion, but it hasn't gelled yet, it hasn't evolved. And those are times where I do believe the body is here, but the mind will follow at some later date.
A lot of it's self-criticism. Sometimes we're too critical, and we cast aside ideas that are quite good and quite valid. Our mind is clouded, who knows what. I know that I was struggling for a theme, for a love theme on Medicine Man, and for 2 weeks, and I was writing the score, but I was getting down to the point where I had to get the love theme because I was running out of stuff to write. I had to start approaching it. I didn't know what to do. I'd written theme after theme after theme and didn't like it, and I finally was paging through all this scrap paper that I'd written these things down. I said, wait a minute. Like the first thing I'd written, I said, there it is. It's been sitting there for 2 weeks.
Well, one of the things that Jerry does a lot is that he will get into a movie and he will research it.
In the case of Under Fire, which I think is one of my better scores, they had 10-tracked that picture with Andean music. And although the picture took place in Nicaragua, using music from the Chilean Andes was geographically improper, it dramatically worked very well. And then I sat here for about a week with about 3 records of Andean and Chilean music, just playing it non-stop all day long, and just sitting there and playing solitaire, listening to this music, and sort of, I'll get this yet. It's quite alien to me, and sort of by osmosis, I absorbed this music. And it came out a hybrid kind of Latin.
Mozzarella. That's fine. Yeah, that's good right there. In Russia House, it was interesting because that wasn't an ethnic score. The director and I agreed that
the last thing we were going to do was have a Russian-sounding score with 1,000 balalaikas. He came up with the idea because Sean Connery was an amateur jazz musician, maybe some jazz influence in this score. And I said, yeah, that's not a bad idea. And then my agent came up with the idea of using Branford Marsalis, and I said, that's a good idea.
He's a consummate professional, so I had one phone conversation with Jerry before we did the Russia House soundtrack. It was a phone, hey, is Branford Marsalis there? Who's this? Jerry Goldsmith. Man, I love your work. Yeah, whatever. I mean, he didn't say whatever. That was saying, yeah, thank you. So, you know, this Rush House thing, I have this great melody. You're going to love it. And it's playing on a MIDI sequencer. I can hear it's a sequence in the background. And I'm like, okay, fine. He goes, oh, that's it. You like it? I said, fine. So, okay, I'll see you next week. That was it. But I wasn't worried because I've been a big Jerry Goldsmith fan since high school.
I wish you a good journey, Barley.
I'll miss you.
On Russia House, he called me up one day and he said, well, I think I'm ready to give you the orchestra. And I said, oh, great, okay, let's get going with this one. And I was so excited about it. And he said the usual 28 violins, 12 violas, you know, the whole, and he said, and a duduk. And I thought, shall I tell him I have no idea what he just said, or shall I just try and fake it? So I said, a duduk. He said, yeah. He said, I think I'm going to kind of feature that. That's going to be a sort of a soloist in the orchestra. So I said, I see. So is that like a Russian instrument? He said, it's sort of Georgian Armenian. I said, oh, okay, fine, a duduk. Got off the phone, had no idea what a duduk was, but in the cello section that day was Armen Kasajikian. So I went up to him and I said, do you know what a duduk is? He said, oh, of course I know a great duduk player. I said, you don't? He said, I do. He said, the only problem is he doesn't speak any English.
We've had a long-standing joke about Jerry. You know, if somebody makes a noise outside, you know, Arthur would say, find out who that is and bring him in here. We can use that in Jerry's next picture.
On Poltergeist, we used rub rods. There was a group from France that came to Royce Hall and had these beautiful long glass rods that they played with rosin gloves, and they were the most ethereal, beautiful sound. So I had heard about a guy from San Diego who was working for the space agency who put together the same kind of thing made out of solid aluminum rods. And I went down to see him, and I bought a couple of octaves of these, what he called rub rods.
I remember on Star Trek, I mean, he spent weeks going over to Emil Richards' house and going through all his exotic collection of percussion instruments and coming up with oglongs and boobams and all kinds of great noises.
It's really a great instrument because it combines aluminum, which is a soft metal, with magnets and strings, bronze strings, and it's you know, just a real rich sound.
I can count on Jerry always to come up with something extremely unique that will be a character in the film.
I started going to hardware stores and junkyards looking for different sounds. And I discovered that stainless steel mixing bowls had two very distinct, beautiful sounds. I just played a bunch of them real fast for Jerry, and he loved it. One of the interesting sounds that Jerry wanted was a bass slide whistle. And we did use that on Planet of the Apes. It's a haunting, wonderful sound.
What will he find out there, Doctor?
His destiny.
I was at camp and was talking to my dad on the phone. He says, I bought a synthesizer. And I said, well, what's a synthesizer? And he says, well, wait till you get home and you'll see. And I came home and there was a Mini Moog and an Echoplex. And I was just hooked, as was he.
It's a little flat. Hang on. Electronics have been something I've been fascinated with since Freud, really, in 1962, where the dream sequences were done electronically. I didn't do them. An Italian composer did them. They were cutting pieces of tape. And then during the 60s, I started getting involved with manipulating sounds electronically. I wanted to express more than I was hearing in an orchestra. And it seemed that electronically processing sound was the way to do it. I find that it gives me a whole new palette. I have a whole new section of the orchestra. I'm not using them to put musicians out of work or to save money. I mean, I still use an 80-piece orchestra, but I'll have 3 keyboardists who may be playing a variety of 12 different synthesizers. And it just gives me a much richer palette.
Any suspense movie only works if the audience really invests emotionally in the characters, and music really helps you do that.
Tied into the raft like this. If we flip, we'll just be dragged under and drowned.
Also, there's this old folk song called "The Water is Wide" that I happened to hear at a local club the night before I left for location that I thought fit the movie both melodically and also thematically.
Funny, I didn't know the tune River Wild. My wife did. She was with me when the director mentioned it, and she started to sing it for me. This song was truly in the spirit of the film. It had already been determined it was going to be sung at the end of the film, so it was a natural. I didn't really use the theme that much in the picture. I used it in the beginning and a couple of short sequences in the first third of the picture, never again until the very end of the picture.
Yeah, let me check. That's beautiful. Yeah, I wish I wrote it. Well, it's my edit. It's a folk song. Who was it? Who had the big record on that? Was it Joe and Eddie? Joan Baez did. Pete Seeger.
What's it called? Water is Wide?
The Water's Wide. But it's not my version of it. They didn't have the counter melody for the violas. No, Eddie and Joe, I think, so did it.
What he's doing is bringing out the themes that are in the picture. You know, and there are certain givens with this story. Number one is the river, of course, which is the unique element of the movie. And Jerry has captured that and, you know, built upon that. You could say that what this movie is the story of a conflict between a woman, the Meryl Streep character, who knows, loves, and respects the river, and a man, the Kevin Bacon character, who doesn't. The river in the movie, in the beginning, is placid and beautiful, which Jerry's music enhances and illustrates. And then gradually, as the picture becomes more exciting, threatening, dangerous, the river also changes and becomes claustrophobic and ultimately terrifying. And, of course, the music is what makes you feel that.
I think there's nobody that is better equipped than the musicians here in Hollywood.
Jerry, we get those extra drums?
Yes, we did, Jerry.
The musicians here in Los Angeles are wonderful.
Every percussionist faces a dilemma that most other musicians don't face. Any day you show up, particularly for a film score, you may be asked to do something that you've really never done before. Actually, there were a couple of setups where I had 13 different rototimes. How am I going to get all the pitches? How am I going to get them in a relative position in front of me so that I can actually reach the damn things and play the part?
I did my first major film at Universal in 1962, and I was still a young kid and an unknown, and they were very nervous about me, but they gave me the chance. And they had a staff orchestrator there, David Tamkin. He was a wonderful man. They said, David's going to orchestrate this picture. I go, what's he going to do? You know, and I'd written the first 4 cues, and I'd orchestrated them. I didn't know how to make a sketch. And they were getting very upset with me in the music department. Finally, David very gently explained to me how to sketch it out. And it's really the basic system that I've used ever since then. I put the first 2 lines I make for the woodwinds, and the next 2 lines are for the brass, and then I have a couple of lines for percussion and piano and harp, and then 2 lines for the strings. And now I've expanded that by a couple of extra lines because of the keyboards I use, the electronics and all that. And I still sometimes run out of space. I don't like to leave it to anybody else. These are my decisions. This is my composition. You're composing a piece for a full orchestra, you compose it for the full orchestra. How can you conceive it any other way? I can't imagine that.
Put on both channels on it? I always call him up and I'll say, you know, what's going on in the score? I mean, what kind of instrumentation are you using? And I'll go over to the house and I'll hear a lot of the music cues that he'll have written and he'll have performed electronically for the director.
A lot of people ask me, where do I get the energy to do the work I do? It's not like mining gold. I mean, the project is an exciting project. The energy goes along with it. And when you're constantly learning and improving your own craft and technique, that's exciting.
I started recording with Jerry Goldsmith in the early 70s, maybe 71, 72. Well, he knows exactly what he wants and how to get it. He is as professional as it gets in this business.
My impression is that Jerry walks in the first day being in command of the total picture, aware of what needs to be done, aware of what problems may beset him. No one can predict all of them. Anyone who's in this business knows that. But he has an excellent global view of what needs to be done, how it's going to play out. He seems, in my opinion, to bring everyone into a focus on what he wants done, and then he gets it done, pure and simple.
Okay, what's one at the top?
You might want to take a secure seat.
Huh? Trumpet's much less on these 16th notes if you can do it. From bar 15. Bar 15.
What I hear Jerry playing at home as he is creating the score is one thing. What he hears in his mind is something else again. I will hear the melodic line, perhaps some chords, a progression, but he hears what the tuba will be playing, the trombone, the trumpet, the cello. I don't hear that. So when I hear it actualized on the sound stage for the first time, it is astonishing.
Paul, is it possible to go to bar 27 without an accent?
You want us to fade away on it, or just...
Dee-da-da-da-da. Don't even play it. Don't even play the downbeat.
Oh. Dee-da-da-da, and stop. Okay, okay.
25.
They read very well, they play it through, you think, but dynamics are such a key element.
Well, I don't like that.
You just can't keep banging through a piece of music.
No, I don't want the crescendo. Make it the other way. Start where you did and make a diminuendo in it.
And the balance of the orchestra is so important.
And then you'll crescendo into bar 36, Doug.
It may sound wonderful, but you hear it on tape, it's just one big bunch of noise. And so you have to balance the orchestra.
Now, Paul, in strings, 36 through up to 52. Let's go half tremolando.
Now, Jerry, at 52, we go back to non-tremolo.
All legato.
All legato, right?
Right.
Concertmaster is a go-between between the conductor, composer, and the players.
All right, now listen, strings. All right, you make, now it's 36, you crescendo, it's the 2-bar up and down. 36 to 38, it's a crescendo, big crescendo.
Okay, up and down, 2 bars to each hairpin.
Woodwinds at bar 36. Same thing with you there. This is the spot, that one spot, Curtis, where we were, you know, when Wade takes off and Terry takes off, where we want that low.
Oh, there too, yes.
Okay.
There's no time to play games or be dishonest. I mean, I'm honest, maybe too much to a fault, and I want everybody else around me to be that way too.
That's exactly what I meant. It's ominous, but not like...
It's not quite as ominous as I had it at home.
Exactly. It's quietly ominous because nothing's happened yet.
It's a harbinger.
Yes.
You have 5 to 7 rehearsals for a symphonic concert, and you have 5 to 8 minutes to learn a piece of music for the score. Basically, studio musical work is a matter of being able to sight read and acclimate quickly to the composition's demands and the composer's demands. It's part of the technique, it's part of the business. Working in Jerry's scores is always interesting. It's never dull, it's never the same, and it's always involving. The orchestra becomes involved in his music making, and that's a rare quality.
But I've seen a different side of Jerry over the past 10 years. I've seen him through several hairstyles and belt sizes and musical technologies. When we started working together, he'd play everything on the piano. Then we went through a stage where he had so much electronic equipment you could hardly get in the room. Now he's settled down to this kind of computer playback thing that he's got where you can actually sort of approximate what the music is going to sound like if played by an orchestra. And through all of this, his most important concern has always been, how can we make the movie better?
It always just gets better and better, and he has instilled 2 things in his colleagues in this town. One thing he does, he keeps us honest, and the second one is he scares the hell out of us. You do, Jerry. You're just perfect. So I think I'm going to get to my job right now and ask you to come up here to receive the award.
I must say, I must have done something right in my 40-odd years in this business, because look at all the directors that are here, and they're still speaking to me. I'm overwhelmed by the Society's award for me. I think that the work you're doing is wonderful, and you can be doing. Motion picture music is truly an American art form. The first film score may not have been by an American, but it's certainly, we in the United States have taken it to the highest level possible. And I think that the only way that we can maintain this and even reach a higher level is by education.
Any of you want to be composers? My future competition. The only advice I can give to all of you is just keep on doing what you're doing, because you're terrific. I mean, if you love music, which I think you must play so well, you just keep doing what you're doing. And you want to make music your life, then you're doing the right thing.
One thing you learn from being involved in something for so long is experience, and you learn. And I love to share that with some of the younger composers. And I see the panic center and everything else, and try to see it'll be okay. Just go in and do it. It'll be okay. You get through it, and you don't have to destroy yourself doing it.
Jerry's such a chameleon that there is, what is this? Who am I? Which composer am I this time? It's so hard to believe the same person who wrote Under Fire wrote Rudy, wrote River Wild.
The most exciting thing in film music today, I think, is what is Jerry Goldsmith working on, and what is his next score going to be like? And so that the day he steps to the podium for the first time on a new score, and you just wait for the downbeat on the first cue, it's tough to find a more exciting moment.
What sets him apart is his ability to find out exactly what is best for a picture and literally subordinate himself to that.
It's much better, Bruce. It sounds good now. But I have to make one more. There are 2 clams in there.
They're perfecting it. They're getting it right. I'm learning the parts so that I can play my part, because the console is an instrument as well as the instruments in the studio. I have moves that I have to do dynamically with the electronics. Someplace I have to bring up solos, I have to bring up violins or woodwinds or whatever it is, you know, that, according to the score that I'm sitting there and reading.
And this is The River Wild, 3-part 3, take 82. Here we go.
life jacket. Come on. Get in the back.
Come on, buddy.
You got him.
Oh,
You got
man.
him.
It ain't going to get much better than that.